They told me that you can't fix a ruined zenithal, that once the shadows are gone, that the light is lost. So I mixed the shadows, pulled the light, and cast a spell called contrast. And no, this isn't another slap chop video. Well, maybe it kind of is, but with testing and a bonus trick that saves a mountain of time. 4 washes, 4 dry brush paints, 12 minis. Let's see what this contrast spell can do. Airbrush Unchained. I'm Wily Wizard, and welcome back to Airbrush Unchained, where we've been torture testing products to develop a rock-solid underpainting. In the first 2 episodes, we built the foundation, primers, zenithal, one to establish the shadows, the other light. Today, we're taking the next step, contrast, deepening the shadows, pulling the highs, and setting up an underpainting so detailed that the rest of the work practically paints itself. This is a full model wash followed by dry brushing, fast, forgiving, a workflow that can make a mini readable in minutes. Some call it chop. Well, let's just bleep that out. I'll show you what works, what doesn't, and why. 4 different brands of washes, 4 different dry brush paints. We're going to put all 12 models, use some of the same stress tests we used in the last episodes, because a good underpainting isn't just about how it looks. It's about whether it can hold up to the work that comes after. And there's a bonus. Somewhere in here is a trick that will cut the wash step by almost 75%. I'm not going to put it in the chapters. If you want to see it, you'll have to stick around and find it. By the end of this episode, you'll know how to take a zenithal foundation and push it to the next level, cleanly, fast, and strong. Let's get started. We're going to kick things off with some Vallejo washes. Black wash on 1 mini, umber on a second. For all of these washes, I'm going to be mixing in Createx 4011 that is quickly drying and keeps the bonding properties of the paint intact. That mix is just going to be a 50-50 mix of the wash and the Createx 4011. I'm going to use a big brush with plenty of liquid. I'll let the wash flow into the shadows and wipe it away from the highs. It moves smooth, maybe a little loose, and if you leave it too wet, you'll get blotches on the flat plates. That's the trade-off. You're not painting here, you're tinting. Let gravity do half the work. Vallejo is soft. Even at full strength, these washes are kind of transparent. Thinned like this though, it's closer to a filter. The umber warms a little, the black cools a little. Step back to arm's length though, and the difference is kind of quiet. The new Vallejo mixes dry pretty flat. Probably one of the most matte finishes of all the washes in the test. There was no satin sheen to fight against later. Durability? I expected peeling. I got none. Even with the white spirits, it stayed locked down. Only 1 chip occurred, and that was from an old ink zenithal, which we kind of covered in the last episode, finding the most durable zenithal paint, in which we learned a lesson. Your base is everything. Vallejo isn't for speed, it's for subtlety. If your zenithal came out a bit weak and the white wasn't strong enough, the transparency Vallejo has lets the light you sprayed do more of the talking. Bottom line, matte finish, reliable adhesion, lower impact on value. This wash is for subtlety, not speed. Next up, Citadel colors. Nuln Oil and Agrex Earthshade. Legends in the hobby. Even if you've never bought a pot, you know these names. Same mix as before, half wash, half 4011. And right away, you feel the step up from Vallejo. These washes just settle. Pigment sinks exactly where you want it. Recesses deepen, while the raised surfaces stay cleaner. Less babysitting, less chasing puddles around with the brush. Nuln Oil goes on looking heavy. It floods every panel like a black tide, but after drying, it calms down. It finds a middle ground, dark enough to define without crushing the light you built in your zenithal. Agrex is warmer, earthier. Even at arm's length, that tone comes through. Compared to Vallejo, this is a bigger stroke, more contrast, more warmth, a stronger overall shift in value. Both of them dry with a satin sheen. That's the Citadel signature. Thinning helps a bit, but this isn't exactly a matte wash, and that's fine. Dry brushing knocks that sheen down in minutes, and well, that's the next step. So, durability, rock solid. No rub off, no scratches, just balanced, predictable results. There's a reason these two washes have a reputation, and after using them, it's easy to see why. They're definitely not the cheapest, but there's a reason people swear by these two washes. Next up, Army Painter. This brand catches heat like no other. Low opacity paints and definitely the cheapest option on the rack. But when it comes to washes, the story changes. I use Strong Tone from the new Fanatic line and Shadow Tone from an older D&D set that's been with me since the beginning. Two different eras, same goal. Rich shadows, fast. Strong Tone is dark, darker than Vallejo Umber, even a touch darker than Citadel's Agrax. And warm, deep earthy warmth that settles exactly where you need it. Shadow Tone, even smoother. It flows just a bit easier. I suspect it's the finish. Satin always runs freer than matte. Both of these do what you want a wash to do. The highs stay clear, the darks dig in, and transitions are gentle. Fast, predictable work. The older Shadow Tone dries with a satin sheen. The new Fanatic Strong Tone, more matte. That satin coat is slightly tougher, but even the matte cured solid. No scratches, no rub off, even with white spirits. Army Painter's regular paints might catch flack, but their washes, they definitely deserve a place on the bench. And finally for washes, Pro Acryl. I'll be honest, when I first tried these washes straight out of the bottle, I wasn't impressed. Too transparent, a little too thick. Almost loamy, like the paint wanted to sit still instead of move. But thin them down with 4011, they wake up. The mix unlocks them. Now they glide. Pigment finds the low points with real precision, and the highs stay bright and clean. Suddenly, they're standing shoulder to shoulder with Citadel and Army Painter. They do still carry some extra weight. On smooth, broad areas, big cloaks or armor plates, you have to keep an eye on pooling and tide marks. Matte paints just don't flow as far, and you can see the difference. But once they settle, they deliver. Strong contrast. A fully matte finish. No satin sheen to knock down later. And durability? Right there with the best of them. No scratches, no rub off. So the verdict? If you manage the pooling, Pro Acryl is absolutely in the same league. Matte, high contrast, and tough. They just ask you to slow down and work with intention.
Alright lads, it's time for the bonus.
That wraps the brushwork. 4 brands, 4 different characters, all of them doing the job, but with different strengths. And just when you think that's the end of it, there's one more thing. Something I stumbled into completely by accident. One day while airbrushing, I drowned a mini in paint. Way too much. Out of panic, I blasted it with air, trying to push the paint out of the details. And that's when I saw it. The paint started behaving like a wash.
Airbrush Unchained.
Filed under happy accidents. Next time I needed to wash a whole batch, I pulled that thread. I used the same washes with a 50-50 mix straight into the airbrush. And instead of brushing it on, I flooded the model. Not gentle, really lay it on. Then with small controlled bursts of air with the airbrush, I pushed the wash off the high points and into the shadows. It takes a little practice, but once you get the feel, this method cuts the time down by about 75%. Especially when you're working in batches of 5 or 10 minis, it's a huge time saver, even considering cleanup. And the results? They're almost identical. Maybe a touch smoother, a hint more satin, slightly less pigment clinging to the deepest recesses. But you'd need to look twice to tell them apart. For me, that's a trade I'll happily make. This isn't a reason to buy an airbrush, but if you've already got one, this technique is a game changer. Sometimes chaos spills over and leaves a map behind. Not every shortcut skips the work, some just change the path. You start dry brushing with Schminka Prime Acryl. This is a heavy body artist acrylic, thick, dense, and very matte. It goes on bold, catches every edge right away. But the trade-off, that thickness dries on the bristles almost immediately. After a few passes, you need to dampen the brush, just to keep it from dusting instead of painting. Applied carefully, the results are crisp. The edges pop, the mids stay clean, no smudging. It's a dry paint that wants to stay on the high ground. And the finish? Flat, no shine. Exactly what you want at this stage. Durability though, not so great. This one came off the easiest under the bud. Plenty strong for display, but if you handle your minis before sealing, be careful. Strong edges, soft mids, ultra matte, but fragile. That's schminke. This paint comes out like a hammer. It hits hard, but it doesn't dance. Next up, Pro Acryl Heavy White. This is where a paint made for miniatures shows its edge. It's still a heavy-bodied paint, but smoother than schminke. Not as thick, it flows better, clings to edges naturally, and needs a little less babysitting. The coverage is great, it pops edges fast, but like all dry brushing, you want to build, not blast. Multiple light passes. Repetition gives you control. It does dry out, and you'll still need to moisten your brush from time to time. Less than schminke, but more than thinner hobby paints. The finish, mostly flat with the faintest touch of satin. And that satin? Turns out this isn't a matte paint. The label says satin, and that's why it held up better. I didn't really realize that until I was making the video. This is the only dry brush paint that didn't wipe away instantly. It still rubs off, but it clings a little longer. Pro Acryl takes the heavy body formula and dials it in for minis. Better flow, better finish, and just a little more toughness. This one feels like it was forged with minis in mind. A blade honed for edges. Small adjustments here turn heavy strokes into clean light. Now let's talk about Vallejo model color, Pale Sand. This color has a reputation. Painters love it for its warm highlights. That touch of golden warmth bends the light and gives you a classic outdoor feel. Cool shadows, warm highs. Compared to heavy body paints, Vallejo feels different, creamier. It stays wet a little longer. That makes it easier to work with, but it's also easier to overdo. One of these three models paid the price. I left the paint too wet. Instead of catching edges, it smeared, filling recesses and blowing out gradient. The fix? Either let the paint sit out and thicken before you start, or make sure the brush is dry enough before it hits the model. Pigment density is lighter here. You'll need more passes to build coverage. The result is softer transition, but it takes more work. Durability pretty low. The finish is flat, but the paint wipes off quickly. Pale sand brings warmth and subtlety, but only if you can control that moisture. Pale sand is sunlight in a bottle. But sunlight can burn if you're careless. The wetter the paint, the faster it slips from control. If you like warmth in your highlights, this is your slow ember. And last up, AK 3rd Gen Ice Yellow. If Vallejo is soft, this one is softer still. Smoother, creamier, and just a little more forgiving. After that pale sand mishap, I went in cautious. I kept the brush dry, and it paid off. The paint flows easily over the high points without flooding the mids. No smears this time. Woo! This is the gentlest build of the four. It takes the most passes to get strong coverage. You'll be working longer, but the upside is control. It's very hard to overshoot with this one. And the color? Well, Ice Yellow has a warmer punch than Pale Sand. Almost too warm in places. For most minis it's fine, but on a few of these, I make him back with a wider paint to soften it down. Like the other dry brushed paints, the durability is low and the finish is flat. AK Ice Yellow trades speed for control. A warm, gradual highlight you can build without fear. Ice Yellow flows like cream, gentle, deliberate, and forgiving. The softer the stroke, the slower the climb, but the summit's clean. It's a warm light, almost golden, a little sunshine for the patient. Looking at everything side by side, some patterns stand out. On the wash side, Citadel, Army Painter, and not far behind, Pro Acryl gave the strongest results. All three settled cleanly into the recesses and dried rock solid. No scratches, no lift, no matter what I threw at them. Vallejo, much more transparent. A great choice if your zenithal is a bit weak and you don't want to over darken your mini. And if you spotted that little bonus trick earlier, washing with an airbrush, it works. Almost the same results, just faster if you're already set up for it. For dry brushing, the heavy body acrylics hit hard. They're bold, they stay on the highs, and they reduce risk of accidentally wet painting. But they need more babysitting. Add a little moisture as you go, or they'll dust up fast. The creamier miniature paints flow better. They're more forgiving, but if you don't keep them dry, they'll smear instead of pop. And the color they add will shift your highlights, a feature if you want it, a risk if you don't. None of these dry brush layers were very durable on their own. Pro Acryl's satin formula gave it a slight edge, but all of them rub off easily. That's why we're going to cover sealing and varnishing in the next video in the series, which is important before we begin applying colors to a miniature. In episode 4, we're going to lock all of this down. We'll start by feathering some of the harsh transitions you see at this stage, and then we'll spray a varnish to protect the work, thus completing our underpainting. I know it's been a long journey, but trust me, it'll be worth it. These videos aren't here to tell you what to think. They're here to show you the evidence so that you can think for yourself. Because the truth is, there is no one path. There's just the one that gets you painting. And if you ever feel stuck, take a risk. Question everything, even me. Airbrush on shade. Whether you know me as Enzo Greymane, the Wily Wizard, or Night Owl Forge, you can always count on me to put the words in. Until next time, keep keep and stay inspired.